trumpet and loud let it ring. Jesus is coming again. Cheer up, ye pilgrims, be joyful and sing. Jesus is coming again. Coming again, coming again. Jesus is coming again. Echo at hilltops, proclaim it, ye plains. Jesus is coming again. Coming in glory, the Lamb that was slain. Jesus is coming again. Coming again, coming again. Jesus is coming again. Ooh. Ooh. Amen.
If you would like to play the first video, please, brother.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Who knows who that was? George Bush Sr., right? That was 1991, September 11. We've got a bit of feedback coming in. If you can handle that. So President of the United States, 1991. And he said there is emerging a new world order where the rule of law will govern the conduct of nations instead of the law of the jungle. Now I thought to myself, what is the law of the jungle? And that's when you have a system where we have competing interests and the strongest survive, right? That's like in nature, the strongest will survive. And that's what we have in a world of sovereign nations, where the nations decide their own laws and they compete against other nations for financial power, for territory, and for in military strength as well. That's what we have, and that's what we see today, is the sovereign nations. But what George Bush was talking about was a new world order not governed by that law of the jungle, but governed by the rule of law. And I thought, who's writing the law that is going to govern the conduct of all nations? It's no longer he's talking about sovereign nations deciding their own laws. It's talking about a rule of law that governs the conduct of all nations. So that's what the new world, it's an aspect of the new world order that we have to look at, and we will look at. So we'll go to the next clip, please, brother.
We will share with you the most up-to-date information daily. You can trust us as a source of that information. You can also trust the Director General of Health and the Ministry of Health. For that information, do feel free to visit at any time to clarify any rumour you may hear, covid19.govt.nz. Otherwise, dismiss anything else. We will continue to be your single source of truth.
Okay, so we know that was Jacinda Ardern, right, Prime Minister of New Zealand. And she's talking about having a single source of truth available to the public from the government. So no longer are we encouraged to go and seek the truth for ourselves, but we're to go to the government to learn what is truth. Do you think that's a good idea? No. Well, the government has its place for sure, but also we are to learn for ourselves, right? What is truth? So this is a part of what the New World Order will be. It'll be a control of the truth as well as the control of the conduct. And we have already seen how media outlets follow whatever the government says, right? Did we have any pushback against, with this last COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis, did we have any pushback from the media against what the government was doing? No. The media was totally in collusion with the government. There wasn't even serious questions about the government's actions. Let's continue, brother.
I've made a number of decisions and I want to run through those for you. First of all, from 6 p.m. tonight, I am declaring a state of disaster across Victoria. This will be in addition to the state of emergency that has operated throughout. This means that police and others have additional powers. Beyond that, the stay-at-home restrictions for Metro Melbourne will be enhanced. There will be additional limits to the 4 reasons to leave home. You will no longer be able to leave home or go any further away from your home than a 5-kilometre radius. You will not be able to be at any point more than 5 kilometres away from your home for the purposes of shopping for what you need. Only one person will be able to go shopping once per day, and they will need to secure the goods and services that are what you need within a 5-kilometre radius. In terms of exercise, recreational activity is now no longer allowed. You will be allowed to have 1 hour of exercise, no further.
Okay, so that was Dan Andrews, Premier of Victoria.
The third area of change for Metropolitan Melbourne is that under those state of disaster provisions from 8 p.m. tonight, a curfew will be implemented. So there will be a curfew across Metropolitan Melbourne from 8 p.m. this evening, and it will run from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. each and every day. From Wednesday, we will move to flexible and remote learning for all students in all schools right across the state.
Yeah, so that's Dan Andrews from Melbourne, Australia, Premier there. We have never seen these restrictions on our liberties in my lifetime anyway. I don't know about some of the... I'm not looking at anybody, but some of the older folk, maybe they have some idea of past restrictions, but this is, to me, is just horrendous. You can't even leave your house. You have to get permission to go outside your own home. You can't even go outside if you want for recreation or exercise, and if you want to have exercise, you're only allowed 1 hour. You have a curfew. Okay, there's been curfews in the past, right? But what reasons did we have curfews in the past? Like a war, right? Yeah, but now we have a pandemic, and we're not allowed to leave, well, they call it a pandemic, a flu virus that we can't even leave our homes for after 8 p.m. This is crazy. The world has been in turmoil the last 2 years, and there is unprecedented control being taken by the government. Thank you, brother.
Oui, on va s'en sortir de cette pandémie par la vaccination. Puis on connaît tous des gens qui sont en train d'hésiter un petit peu. On va continuer d'essayer de les convaincre. Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination.
Qui sont extrémistes.
Qui ne croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. C'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là ou est-ce qu'on dit, ben voyons, la plupart...
Okay, so this is Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. He's speaking in French here, but they're a bilingual nation, so he's speaking in French. But notice what he said. First, he demonized those who wanted to exercise their freedom of conscience and not partake of a certain medication. Now, Justin Trudeau said these people who exercise that right to choose their own medication are often misogynist and sexist and racist. How can he say that? That everybody who is resistant or just are concerned about a medication, all of a sudden now he's demonizing your character, who you are, just because you don't want a medication. And look what he said at the end. We have to ask ourselves, do we tolerate these people? This is evil, brethren. This is evil, the times that we've gone through and the times that we are still in. We'll continue. Thank you, brother.
So you basically said this is going to be like, well, it's almost like, you probably don't see it like this, the two different classes of people. If you're vaccinated or if you're unvaccinated, you have all these rights. If you are vaccinated...
That is what it is. So, yep.
Yep, that is what it is. First, we're going to demonize them, and now we're going to separate them. We're going to have a divided society, classes, those who get vaccinated and those who decide not to. It is what it is, she said. Yep. And that's what the government is in the process of doing, dividing our country, dividing nations, and exercising control upon one class. We're going to look at a bit of that control in the next couple of videos. Thank you, brother.
You deserve a government that's going to continue to say, get vaccinated. And you know what? If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train beside vaccinated people and put them at risk.
Wow. If you're unvaccinated, don't think get on a plane or a train and sit next to vaccinated people and put them at risk. That's Prime Minister of Canada again, Justin Trudeau. Terrible, terrible. But look what happened in Northern Territories to this separated class of people. Thank you, brother.
The fully vaccinated can continue as they were. For people who are not vaccinated, lockdown rules will apply to everyone 16 and above. If you are not fully vaxxed, stay home. You are at greater risk of catching COVID, becoming ill, and needing hospital care. You may only leave home for 3 reasons. Medical treatment, including COVID testing or vaccination. For essential goods and services like groceries, power tokens, medications. To provide care and support to a family member or person who cannot support themselves.
Only reasons you can leave your home are the 3 that he's just given. Food and goods and services that you need, essential food, go to the hospital or to visit a family member who needs care. You can't leave your home for exercise. You can't leave your home for recreation. You can't leave your home for any other reason other than that which the government prescribes. And that's only those 3 reasons. And that's for one class of people in the world, or in the Northern Territories anyway, who decided they didn't want to take an experimental medication. So why is this? Why do we have this tremendous restriction on liberty and this grabbing of power by the government? Why has our world gone through such a turmoil in the last 2 years? Now, there are a lot of theories out there. People will say, oh, it's population control. It might be. But look what they explicitly say. Thank you, brother.
We have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this crisis. Its unprecedented shockwaves may well make people more receptive to big visions of change, and global crises like pandemics and climate change know no borders and highlight just how interdependent we are as one people sharing one planet.
This crisis is a golden opportunity. For who? Who is this a golden opportunity for? Well, this is King Charles. And he's saying it's a golden opportunity. It's made people more receptive to big visions of change. Now, I'm worried about what those big changes are that the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, has made people more receptive to. And he hinted at it here. He said, no, these things know no borders. And it shows how interdependent we are as countries, as one people on one planet. So he's talking about globalization. He's talking about a world order. And that's what this crisis has enabled. And we can see that definitively by what I was going to say brother, by what President Joe Biden says.
And now's the time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there. And we've got to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
Yeah? So George Bush, 30 years ago, said there's going to be a new world order. And when we succeed, and we will succeed, he said, then jump forward 30 years and we have President of the United States, Joseph Biden, saying that we are in a shifting time, and this is in the context of the crisis, and there is going to be a new world order, and the United States is going to spearhead that world order, and it's going to bring all nations into unity with it. It's very explicit. They have no qualms in letting everybody know what they're about to do. So our prophecy seminar is on a new world order. We're talking about a new world order because it's very, very applicable to the time that we live in, and it's very important that we understand what's happening behind the scenes. So we're going to talk about who or what is the new world order, and Brother Joseph will be taking that tomorrow night at 6 p.m. So it's something that you don't want to miss. Who really? Biden said that the United States is going to lead the way, but is there a darker, more sinister power behind the Congress of the United States, behind the President of the United States? Is there something running behind the scenes? Is what we need to know. And Brother Joseph is going to talk about that tomorrow night. He's also going to describe what are the laws. Remember we at the start with the first clip of George Bush talking about the conduct of nations is going to be governed by the rule of law. What are those laws that are going to govern the conduct of nations? Very important to know. And following that, Brother Joseph will be giving his final presentation on how those laws conflict with the laws of God and how that conflict will play out here on earth. But tonight, though, is Brother Joseph, and he's going to talk about the future of our world. So that's coming up. What's immediately in store for us? What is the time that we live in? If we look up on Earth's history on a big timeline, where are we on that timeline? Brother Joseph is going to point that out tonight very clearly. But today we're going to look at the history of the world. In order to understand the New World Order, we need to know what the world orders have been like in the past, what has brought about their rise and their fall, and how we can know what God holds for our future. In Daniel 2 verse 28, the Bible says, "There is a God in heaven that reveals secrets." So an attribute of God's character is that he reveals secrets. People like to assume that the Bible is full of symbols that we can't interpret, or has ideas contained in it that are beyond our understanding. But God says that he reveals secrets. So we all know, or some of us know, most of us here probably know the story of Daniel. So we're going to look at Daniel chapter 2 today. And we're going to start with the story of King Nebuchadnezzar's dreams. I'll have verses on the screen you can follow in your Bible for reference, but basically I'm just going to paraphrase everything for the sake of time. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he was the king of Babylon. He besieged Jerusalem, took captive some of the Jewish population and brought them back to Babylon. And some of those captives were Daniel and his friends, and he trained them in the Babylonian sciences and the wisdom of the Babylonians. Now this King Nebuchadnezzar, he had a dream one night. He slept and he dreamt, and the dream was so terrifying or so wild to him that it woke him out of his sleep. And he called to his wise men and he said, "Tell me my dream and the interpretation. It was such a crazy dream. I need to know what it means." And the servants said to him, the wise men, the astrologers, the sorcerers, they said, "Tell us your dream, and we'll tell you what it means." And what did the king say? He said, "I can't remember. The thing is gone from me. I can't remember my dream. You tell me my dream and the interpretation. or I will destroy you and your families. You say you're wise men, you say you have this connection with the gods. Tell me my dream if you're so wise, and I'll give you rewards like you've never known. But the wise men and the astrologers and the magicians, the Chaldeans, they said to him, there's no one on earth that can show you your dream, what's in your head, O king. How can we tell what's in your head? Only the gods, is what they said. Only the gods can tell you what you dream. So the king, for this cause, was very furious, and he commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Well, why wouldn't you, right? You're paying these people to do a job, and then you find out that they're not even doing their job, they're only pretending to do their job. There's no connection between them and the gods. They're just telling him what they want him to know. So he's very furious, and he just ordered for them to be destroyed. And Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they were among what was known as the wise men. So the decree to destroy them, the wise men, also extended to Daniel and his friends. So Daniel went into the king and he said, King, give me some time, I'll show you the interpretation. So he went home and he prayed with his friends, and God revealed to Daniel what the king saw in the night vision. And Brother Joseph's got a picture on the screen. Something is an artist's rendition of what the king saw in his dream. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? I mean, I wonder what went through Daniel's mind when he saw this thing. But he got down onto his knees and he said, blessed be the name of the Lord forever and ever. He praised God. And he described here in Daniel 2, verse 22, he described the attribute of God. Again, he said, he revealeth the deep and secret things. So if there's anything that we can remember from today, or from this morning, is that God is a revealer of secrets. He reveals the deep and secret things. So Daniel went back to the king and he said, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, all these pagan entities, none of them can show you what you dreamed. But he said, there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Again, this attribute of God is over and over being reinforced to us by the Bible, that God is a revealer of secrets. And specifically, Daniel said that God made known to Nebuchadnezzar what shall come to pass in the latter days, in the last days, in other words, what shall come to pass. Meaning, what's going to happen, right? God told Nebuchadnezzar what's going to happen in the future. And he did this. Daniel gives the reason. Why did God show Daniel the interpretation of the dream to the king? And why did Daniel show the king the interpretation? And he said in verse 30, for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king. Who's that? Who's making known the interpretation to the king? Sorry? Who's making known to the king the interpretation of his dream? Daniel, right? Yeah, Daniel through God. Oh, someone said God. Yeah, all right, I hear you now. So Daniel through God is making known. But so for their sakes, for Daniel and his friends' sakes that are making known the interpretation to the king, is the thing revealed to Daniel? No, because the king issued the decree that they should all be destroyed. But God gave them the interpretation that they don't have to be destroyed. But notice this, also that thou, the king, mightest know the thoughts of thine heart. So God gave the revelation to Daniel to give to the king so that the king can know the thoughts of his own heart. And we're going to see what that means right at the end. But let's go through the dream now. What did Daniel say God showed him was the meaning of the dream? First, the dream, he said, thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, if you can play, brother, his belly and thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Now, can you imagine what's going through the king's head at this time? He had a dream and he knew it was a powerful dream, but he forgot it, and now there's someone else telling him what he dreamed. The wise men before had said, only the gods can show you what you dreamed. And Daniel himself said, there is a God in heaven that can show you what you dreamed. And now he's listening to Daniel, telling him in precise detail exactly what he dreamed. I think I have an idea of the thoughts that were going through King Nebuchadnezzar's head at that time. It continued, thou sawest till a stone was cut without hands, which smote upon the image of his feet. Smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold, broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image, again, please, brother, the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So that was the dream that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed. Now, Daniel said, that's what you saw. Now I'm going to tell you what it meant. And he began with this. Thou art this head of gold. King Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. And he qualified this by saying, thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of heaven has he given into thy hand, and has made thee ruler over them all. In other words, wherever people live, wherever the beasts of the field reside, wherever the fowls of the air rest, you are a ruler. You have an amazing, glorious kingdom. You are this head of gold. So his kingdom was Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. And it's a little bit confusing because Babylon is also the name of the city, the capital city, if you like. So Babylonia was the kingdom, Babylon was the city. Now we're just going to watch a short video about Babylon, if you like, brother.
This region is part of modern-day Iraq. The area used to be called Mesopotamia. This signified the land between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. According to historical records, a huge metropolis is said to have existed near the two rivers. Babylon, the capital of Babylonia, the city of cities as it was called at the time. To this day, people can still see the famous walls of Babylon. However, the only original sections that are still preserved today are the foundation walls. The remainder of the walls were reconstructed. The massive brick walls are one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Greek historian Herodotus enthused about the city's magnificence in his historical writings. His descriptions of Babylon made the city famous in the ancient world. He told fantastic tales about individual buildings, like the Tower of Babel. It was said to have reached into the heavens and to have woken the wrath of God. Herodotus wrote that the Babylonian capital was one single grandiose wonder with 86 kilometers of fortifying walls that included 100 gates. But how much of this is actually true? Technology might shed some light on the matter. Scientists are examining ancient clay tablets with Babylonian texts. First, they use a laser to scan the ancient cuneiform script. The scan of the tablet is reflected onto a plane and copied onto a glass plate. The special thing about this imaging procedure is that it shows the clay tablet as a 3-dimensional image. The image of the tablet is available on the internet for further examination and decoding.
The Sumerians, Babylonians, and Syrians were very prolific writers. They wrote everything that could be written down. Letters, official documents, and everything they knew. Their literature, myths, astrological knowledge. Everything they knew has been passed on to us on these clay tablets.
Scientists have tried to reconstruct the city and have realized that Babylon was a colossal fortification. Its massive double walls were impenetrable. It was a huge metropolis with spacious squares, long straight boulevards, and a network of small alleyways. A Babylonian leader wrote, "No one before has ever done what I have," anticipating the city's glory. The historian Herodotus, on the other hand, visited a city that already lay in ruins, but the expansive streets and the remnants of the walls hinted at Babylon's earlier splendor.
Yeah, so that's the kingdom of Babylon. It was interesting. I wonder which ruler said that. No other ruler has done what I have done. Talking about his glorious kingdom. Wonder who that was. If it was Nebuchadnezzar or... we don't know for sure. But we know that Babylon existed. We know the Bible's not just a story. There is archaeological evidence that we saw. With the tablets and the writings. These people, they wrote everything down. We know their history. We know their kingdom. We know it. The Bible is not a fairy tale. The things that it describes are true. And we know, and it said there that the later historian Herodotus stood on the ruins of Babylon and still described its splendor, what it would have been. This was a glorious kingdom, very fitting to be symbolized by the head of gold. Now Daniel continued to the king, and he said, "After thee another kingdom shall arise, a kingdom inferior to thee." So what does this mean? Well, if there's a kingdom coming after you, that means you're finished, right? And there's a new kingdom. So there's going to be a transition of world power, gone from Babylon to the next kingdom. And I'd just like to point out here that Daniel chapter 2 would have been written before the fall of Babylon, obviously. It's talking about Daniel conversing with the king of Babylon, so it's obviously written before Babylon fell to the succeeding kingdom, and that was in 540 BC. So somewhere before 540 BC was the book of Daniel chapter 2 written. Now that's important to note because all the successive kingdoms came after this. So Daniel was, the secular skeptics out there will say Daniel cannot have been written as early as 540 BC. Do you know why they said it cannot have been written that early? The reason why Daniel could not have been written as early as 540 BC is because it describes in detail all the successive kingdoms that are going to take place, and it's impossible that Daniel could have known what's going to happen before 540 BC, what's going to happen in the future. Therefore, it's impossible for the book of Daniel to be written before 540 BC. But do you know what that tells me? That the book of Daniel is from God. The Bible is from God precisely because it shows us what's going to happen before it takes place. So Babylon was our first kingdom, 600 BC to 540 BC. I don't know if the date 600 is absolutely precise, but we'll use it for now. But it fell in 540 BC, and the kingdom inferior to it that arose was known as the Achaemenid Empire or the Persian Empire, headed by Cyrus the Great. Now I just want to describe to you the tale of the fall of Babylon by Cyrus the Great. Cyrus, with the first approach of the ensuing spring, marched forward against Babylon. The Babylonians, encamped without their walls, awaited his coming. This is from the histories written by Herodotus, the historian that short documentary mentioned. He continued, "A battle was fought at a short distance from the city in which the Babylonians were defeated by the Persian king, whereupon they withdrew within their defences. Here they shut themselves up and made light of his siege, having laid in a store of provisions for many years in preparation against this attack." So they had a fortress, an impenetrable fortress in the city of Babylon, the capital city, and they had years of provisions within that fortress. And they laughed at Cyrus the Great. "You can't touch us. We are the Babylonians. We are invincible." But what did Cyrus do? He placed a portion of his army at the point where the river, this is the river Euphrates that flowed through Babylon. You remember that was described in that video? The river enters, he placed his army at the point where the river enters the city and another body at the back of the place where it issues forth, with orders to march into the town by the bed of the stream as soon as the water became shallow enough. This is all recorded in history. He then himself drew off with the unwarlike portion of his hosts, and he turned the river Euphrates by a canal into the basin, which was then a marsh, on which the river sank to such an extent that the natural bed of the stream became fordable. So he diverted the river Euphrates. The river that ran through, the Euphrates that ran through Babylon dropped. And you can imagine what happened next. Hereupon the Persians, who had been left for the purpose at Babylon by the riverside, entered the stream, which had now sunk so as to reach about midway up a man's thigh, and thus got into the town. The Persians came upon them by surprise, and so took the city. And here fell the golden kingdom of ancient Babylon. Remarkably, we're talking about Daniel was written before the fall of Babylon, maybe a few years before. In the book of Isaiah, we read something, and this was written 200 years before the fall of Babylon. Look what the book of Isaiah says. Thus saith the king, thus saith the Lord, that saith to the deep, be dry, I will dry up the rivers, that saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying, to Jerusalem thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. The Bible names the king that would free the Jews. Remember, the Babylonians took the Jews captive and destroyed Jerusalem. The Bible says to Jerusalem thou shalt be built. He said that is done by Cyrus, the anointed of the Lord. You'll read in verse 1 of Isaiah 55, and he describes the way that Cyrus would do this is by drying up the rivers. Who can doubt the authenticity of the Bible? This was 200 years before the very events that we know took place. And we read in Daniel chapter 6, this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So there were two kings of Persia. Now Darius was the Mede and Cyrus was the Persian. And we know this from history, that this was a dual empire in effect. Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian. Now, that's the second part of the statue done. And just notice here that there are two arms, like we can say, well, there are two arms. There were two kingdoms ruling at this time. One was stronger than the other. The Persians ruled and the Medes governed under their rule, but you might say that there were two rulers of the Medo-Persian Empire, Darius and Cyrus, to begin with anyway. The next kingdom comes as a symbol of brass. Again, inferior to silver, right? And in Daniel chapter 2, verse 39, it says, it shall bear rule over all the earth. So history tells us what the third kingdom would be, but does anybody here know what the third kingdom was? All right, we'll tell you then. Daniel 8:20, the Bible says, the Bible explains itself. We don't have to guess. This is written, remember, this is written well before the events took place. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Okay, we got that, Darius and Cyrus, right? These are the kings symbolized by this ram in Daniel chapter 8. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, or Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. And if you continue reading Daniel chapter 8, the rough goat destroys the ram or breaks its horns and has victory, tramples on it. It's very gruesome, actually, what the goat does to the ram. So in other words, Greece is going to come and it's going to destroy Medo-Persia. Who's the first king of Greece? Classical history, anybody? Alexander the Great. Thank you, sir. We're just going to, Brother Petrus, if you can just go to the link, and we're just going to confirm that the Bible history is, in fact, or the Bible prophecy is in fact what happened in world history. Now, this is all these sources are taken from Britannica, most of them anyway, the Encyclopedia Britannica. So Greece here, look, we read this. We had Cyrus the Great and Darius the Great, but look at this. That was Medo-Persia dynasty. The dynasty became extinct with the death of Darius following his defeat in 330 BC by Alexander the Great. Bible is true, brothers and sisters. Bible says it before it happens, that we shall know that there is a God in heaven that reveals secrets. So Greece was the next empire, and it ruled from 330 through to about 160, I think 168, somewhere around there. Now there was a fourth kingdom mentioned, and the Bible says, it shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. So there's going to be a forceful military kingdom that's going to destroy and to trample and to break and bruise before it. And we know that is a very fitting symbol for the kingdom of Rome, or the empire of Rome. And if we can just go to the link again, brother, there's a short clip of ancient Rome. I should just note there that Rome began a long time before it became a world empire. So it said there it was founded by Romulus and his brother, Remus and Romulus, at 740 BC or something like that. Yeah, that's when it was founded, but it became a world empire when it overtook Greece in 168 BC. So Rome was the next empire. And interesting, you remember how we talked about the Medo-Persian Empire had two governing bodies, the Medes and the Persians, symbolized by the two arms of the statue. Well, Rome split in two, and it is symbolized by the two legs, right? Eastern and Western Rome. Now, continuing on in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Daniel said that this kingdom, this Roman kingdom, these legs are going to be divided. And there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. So this is going to be, the legs ran into the toes, right? And the toes are the divisions of the feet. So this kingdom is going to be a divided kingdom, but the strength of Rome is going to remain in all of them. The iron continues from the legs through down to the toes. So the political body of Rome was going to continue. However, in the bottom of the statue, when it becomes the feet and the toes, it becomes mixed with this miry clay, and parts of it become strong and parts of it become weak. So we know this from history. Again, there's no doubting about what happened, because Rome indeed fell into divisions. And these divisions, from history we know, were the Alemanni, the Franks, the Burgundians, Suevi, Vandals, Visigoth, Anglo-Saxons, Ostrogoths, Lombards, and Heruli. Please, brother, that one there. So Rome did fall into divisions, 10 divisions of these warring tribes. They call them Germanic tribes. Not sure if they're Germanic, but that's what they say. Continue on. The toes of the feet were part of iron, part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Partly strong and partly broken. So these divisions, they're going to be strong divisions, and there's going to be weak divisions. And we see this from history because three of these kingdoms that arose out of Rome were wiped out of existence. The Vandals, the Ostrogoths, and the Heruli. They were destroyed. We'll just skip down to the next slide, brother, with the Alemanni. The Alemanni became... Do you know what the word for Germany is in Spanish, by the way? Aleman, right, yeah. So continue, please, brother, on to slide 59. The Alemanni became Germany. So these kingdoms that we saw that arose out of the fall of Rome, they didn't go away. They are the kingdoms that we see today. We have the Germans, the French, the Swiss, the Portuguese, Spanish, the English, and the Italians. These are all the descendants of those original kingdoms that arose out of the fall of Rome. They exist today. The Bible is true, brothers and sisters. There is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets. And he told to the king, and hence he told to us, what's going to happen in the latter days. Now, this statue started with the head, right? Then it went to the arms, the chest and arms, went to the belly and thighs, went to the legs, the feet and the toes. But notice something, there's no more kingdoms after the toes. So we know where we are in this world history, right? We're not in the time of the Babylonians, we're not in the time of the Grecians, we're not in the time of the Romans. We're right down the bottom in the time of these divided kingdoms, which are now the nations in Europe. So that's divided Rome. It was the last of the kingdoms symbolized on that statue. But you think about this for a little bit. These divided kingdoms are never going to be one, and they shall not cleave one to another, the Bible says. But yet we're talking about a new world order. So how is it that we can have a law that can govern the conduct of nations and yet have divided sovereign nations? How is this possible? Let's just listen to King Charles one more time.
We have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this crisis. Its unprecedented shockwaves may well make people more receptive to big visions of change, and global crises like pandemics and climate change know no borders and highlight just how interdependent we are as one people sharing one planet.
So pandemics and things like climate change know no borders. These are ideologies, well, not ideologies, but they're not political powers, but they are, how would you say? Well, they are aspects of politics that transcend borders, right? We have a pandemic. Now, the pandemic didn't make us all come up, right? However, we do follow what issued forth from the CDC and the WHO. Well, WHO is not American, but we do follow the Americans' lead, right? So what issued from America came to New Zealand, came to Australia. All the lockdowns, all the vaccine mandates, it all started in America. And it issued forth down through to us. So it wasn't so much a political power that will govern the nations of the world, but it will be an ideology or an idea or a crisis maybe that will cause all nations to follow America's lead. We'll still be our sovereign nations, but we will follow America. So Brother Pajosa is going to touch on what laws are these that King Charles is talking about, that transcend borders and make us know how interdependent we as countries are on one another. And he'll talk about that, I think I mentioned, is next week. But the question I have, though, is, remember when we talked about the statue of the legs of iron, went down to the feet of iron and the toes of iron and clay? That the iron symbolized Rome. Where is Rome today? Is Rome still a world empire today? Yes. It is? Yeah. So Brother Pedros is going to talk about that, where Rome is today and how it's still ruling the world today, even under the cloak of seemingly being a small and weak nation. You know, the Vatican's not a very big country or a state. Continuing on, remember the king? We're just going to remind ourselves of the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, because he's the subject of this story. Daniel said to him, you know, I'm making known to you, or God makes known to you the interpretation that you might know the thoughts of your heart. Did the king become aware of his thoughts? What were his thoughts that Daniel was talking about? What happened to the king when Daniel told him the dream and the interpretation? Do you know what he said? The king, Nebuchadnezzar, fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings, a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal the secret. Daniel convinced Nebuchadnezzar that God is a God of gods. He is the God of heaven and the Lord of kings. Amazing, isn't that? That the king of the world empire can say, your God is a Lord of kings, including me. He rules over all. This is a pagan king that God revealed to him, that God revealed himself to. And it says in John, this is Jesus' words in John 14:29, and now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it has come to pass, you might believe. Nebuchadnezzar dreamed, and when it came to pass that he knew the interpretation, that he believed. Now when we read the Bible and we see the Bible predicting the future in precise accuracy, and precision and accuracy, do we believe the Bible? Can we read the Bible, and when it says something to us, can we believe it and take it as it is? That's what we can learn from a pagan king, brothers and sisters. If a pagan king can believe there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, then so can we. God says, or the Bible says in Isaiah 46:9-10, remember the former things of old, for I am God, there is none else. I am God, there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, I will do all my pleasure. And again, Daniel 2:28, there is a God in heaven that reveals secrets. So God revealed from the Bible in ancient times. You know, this is well before all these things took place, the secrets of the future. He talked about Babylon, the kingdoms of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and even divided Rome, right down to the end of time. God revealed everything to us, that we might not only be prepared for what the future brings, but that we might believe also, as Nebuchadnezzar did, that there is a God in heaven that reveals secrets. In Revelation chapter 1 verse 3, the Bible pronounces a blessing upon those who read prophecy. It says, blessed is he that readeth and they that hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. You know, people say the book is a sealed book. The book of Revelation is a sealed book. We can't understand it. But what's the name of the book you're talking about? Revelation. But God reveals secrets. He doesn't want to keep things hidden. He wants to let us know that we might be prepared and that we might believe. So Brother Joe's going to talk tonight on what God has revealed about our imminent future, about the signs of the time that we live in. And I'll just finish on this. The last portion of the interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream by Daniel says this, and in the days of these kings, that's the divided kingdom, on the toes of the statue, and the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these, that's the kingdoms of the world, all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So we are looking forward to God's kingdom, not all these world empires that oppress and take control of us and restrict our liberties. We couldn't even come to church during the pandemic. There's going to be an empire where we'll never leave church. And that's God's empire. So I'm looking forward to that, and we're going to talk about that on the last meeting of our seminar series. So thank you all for joining us today, and may God have his blessing upon his word. Amen.
as you journey on, look for the waymarks passing one by one, down through the ages, past the kingdom for. Where are we standing? Look the waymarks on. For the waymarks, the great prophetic waymarks, down through the ages, past the kingdoms for. Look for the waymarks, the great prophetic waymarks. The journey's almost on. The Assyrian kingdom ruled the world, then Medo-Persia's banner were unfold, and after Greece held universal sway, Rome seized the scepter. Where are we today? For the waymarks, the great prophetic waymarks, down through the ages, past the kingdoms for. Look for the waymarks, the great prophetic waymarks. The journey's almost on. Down in the feet of iron and of clay, weak and divided, soon to pass away. What will the next great glorious drama be? Christ and his coming and eternity. For the waymarks, the great prophetic waymarks, down through the ages, past the kingdoms for. Look for the waymarks, the great prophetic waymarks. The journey's almost on.
Let's pray.